So yesterday, the very sad news that former Lubbock Mayor Tom Martin passing away yesterday, and joining us on the phones to talk about his friend. And, not only, a colleague, because they were both on the city council at the same time, but really a friend of his, former Councilman Paul Beane on with us. And Paul, good morning, and our condolences to you. I know you and the former mayor were very, very close.
Well, yeah, it's a great loss for our city. It's a great loss for our general South Plains community, because he had such great vision, not only Chad just as mayor for 4 years, or as a councilman but for 4 years, but as serving on the Port to Plains Coalition, serving on the MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, which is a group of elected leaders that try to look far into the future for our transportation needs and our road system 50, 60, 75 years into the future. So he was a great thinker, but he was every man. I've got a favorite expression about Tom. I always loved him. Sometimes I didn't like him when we knocked heads over some issue, none of which I can seem to recall at the moment, because all of a sudden they don't seem as important as they once were. But he was a good friend, a great friend to be on the water with, on the coast, fishing or flying down the highway, singing David Allan Coe songs at the top of our voice. I knew a Tom Martin for many years that not very many people were privileged to know.
Yeah. Paul, one of the things that when I got home last night, and obviously the news was spreading and people were posting on Facebook, he had an impact on a lot of people's lives here in Lubbock.
Well, yes, he did, not only as an elected official, as a councilman, as mayor, but as a board member of Salvation Army, as a man who, despite being on a cane for the last 3 or 4 years of his life because of severe back issues, on freezing nights in that mobile kitchen for the Salvation Army, out on the streets looking for the homeless to try to make sure they had blankets, that they had food to try to make it through the night if they could not convince them to go to a shelter. Also at his church. I remember the day of the great Haboob several years ago, around 2010 or something, when the massive dust storm rolled in. Tom Martin and his wife Karen were up at their church selling pumpkins in preparation for Halloween. He was always ready to roll up his sleeves, dig right into any project that needed done, and he did not ever care who got the credit for the success. All he wanted to make sure was that it was done correctly and that he had a hand in it. And if he had a hand in it, it was almost always done right.
Visiting with former Lubbock City Councilman Paul Beane. Of course, you hear him here on KFYO quite a bit when filling in for some of us. And Paul, you know that people in this town, when it comes to work done on a city council, and an impact that a city councilman or a mayor can have, sometimes people's memories are very short. Tom Martin had a big impact on this community and the growth of this community. And I just received a text message that I think you would agree with, because I saw one of your quotes today. And the text message that came in, I think Milwaukee Avenue should be renamed in Tom Martin's honor.
Well, I don't think it should be renamed. I thought it should have been named Tom Martin Avenue or Thoroughfare to begin with, because of the work that he did. And there's an interesting story, Chad. And I could talk for hours about Tom Martin, but when they were trying to secure the right-of-way, there was a landowner out on Milwaukee that was not willing to toss his land in for the right-of-way, a portion of his land for the right-of-way, which, of course, you understand, once Milwaukee was built, his land would become 10, 15, 20, 30 times more valuable than it was just there as farmland. But he was the lone holdout, and Tom Martin, as a councilman, was visiting with these guys, and talking about him, and he could not get a commitment out of this one last fellow. This is a very un-Martin-like Tom Martin story. So Tom gets up out of his chair, walks around the table, leans over, and kisses the guy on top of the head and said, "Now, come on, let's do this, okay?" And everybody busted out laughing, and the guy had no choice but to toss his land in for the completion of Milwaukee Avenue. But that's just the kind of guy he was. A lot of people had no idea that Tom Martin had a great sense of humor. Of course, we all know he was a great baseball fan. And when you look back at his accomplishments, I mean, in 2008, when Tom was elected mayor, we were entering the greatest recession since the Great Depression. And I was lucky enough to be elected at the same time to serve on that council with him, along with Gilbert and Floyd Price, John Leonard, Linda DeLeon, Todd Klein. But the thing that he wanted to do first was cut taxes, which we did. And it was unheard of in a recession to cut taxes, but he knew that it would help Lubbock in the long run. In my 4 years on the council with Tom's help, we paved $25 million worth of streets just in District 4. We built the Lake Allen Henry pipeline under his leadership. We built the Southeast Lubbock County water treatment plant, which was badly needed. We reworked the Bailey County well fields up around Muleshoe to increase their production of drinking water. We built another pipeline in Roberts County. I mean, it's his list of accomplishments in his leadership role as mayor. It's unprecedented in our history. And of course, if he had done nothing else in Lubbock except develop Milwaukee Corridor, where one city council lady said, "Well, there's nothing out there but jackrabbits." I wish you could see it now. Hundreds of millions of dollars worth of development alone out there, and all of those people are paying taxes.
Yeah.
So he was a great guy and a great friend. I'll miss him a lot. I have very few people now left that I can bounce things off of and get a straight answer. But he was certainly one of those men.
He was, and he was somebody who he was a straight shooter. He was somebody who, honestly, he would tell you exactly how he felt about things. But and you know this too, Paul. There are a lot of elected officials, former elected officials, who they can't stand the media. They don't like to be criticized. They don't like to be questioned about anything. What I always really respected about Tom Martin was that he had fun coming on radio and talking to people and explaining to people what was going on within city government. He had a good time with it.
Oh, absolutely.
And
it goes back, Chad, to the fact that right out of Texas Tech University, he was a radio and television reporter for Channel 13. Mm-hmm. That was his first real employment after 4 years at Texas Tech. He always claims that he was mostly Texan. Of course, a lot of people don't know Tom was born in New York State as a military brat. Yeah. But his father ended up in Lubbock because of Reese Air Force Base, even though his father was in U.S. Army. He was an engineer in the Army. In fact, helped construct the bridge over the Rhine that was made into a great movie called A Bridge Too Far. So, but regardless, he was a great guy. You're absolutely dead spot on about Tom. If you didn't want the answer, you better not ask him the question. He was going to tell you just the way.
He was going to tell you not only the answer, but how we got there, who messed up beforehand, and how we're going to fix it. I mean, it was it was one of those where you could ask Tom Martin one question, per segment, and really
right.
you could get that 15-minute answer from Tom Martin because he was just so knowledgeable on everything.
The old saying was, "Don't ask Tom what time it is because he'll tell you how to build a watch."
That's right. It's just a great guy, great family man, a great friend to so many, and a mentor to a lot of people. And Paul, any more thoughts on just the passing of former Lubbock Mayor Tom Martin?
Chad, I've really tried to put a face on this thing, and I've tried to come to grips with it. But this is it's been a pretty emotional, actually, about 10 days for me with Tom's sudden illness and what has happened. And it's close to losing a family member. It really is, because we were close for many, many years, and he was a good man, and he loved Lubbock. And you can't say much more about anybody that's more important than being a good man, loving his hometown, and working for everybody, large and small, big and little. He cared for everybody.
Amen. Paul, thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Chad.
Thank you, Paul. That's Paul Beane, former Lubbock City Councilman, on the passing of former Lubbock Mayor Tom Martin, great leader of this city.